Back in the day, it was very common for a woman to wait until marriage before sleeping with a man. That attitude is increasingly going out of fashion, and it's now sort of the cultural norm that men and women are promiscuous in their early years. However, during our interviews, we did uncover one woman who explained that she would wait until marriage. It's really interesting. I'm going to play that footage for you now, and I want you to pay close attention to the part where she says that it's a gift. Take a listen.
Do you think sex is something that can be had casually, or is it better reserved for having an official relationship with someone?
I'm more of officially in relationship with someone. I prefer to wait till you get married, but...
Okay. Why is that better in that way rather than casual, do you think?
Me?
Yeah.
Because it's the only thing you have to give him when you get married. Like the only thing he don't knows or he don't whatever. So it's like the present you give him, like I give me entirely to you.
Okay, cool. Is it like something kind of sacred, I guess? Or like
no,
important?
But it's like a gift. Gift. But it's yes, you keep everything for him. Only
right.
For him.
I see.
Her response is really interesting because typically it's women who are religious that want to save their virginity until marriage because they believe that that's what God wants or something like that. The interviewer actually explicitly asked, does she believe that it's something sacred? Is this some kind of religious belief essentially? And she says no, she just believes that it's a gift she wants to give to her husband, the whole of herself. Now, I am not religious and I don't believe in waiting until marriage before you have sex. My view on sleeping around is that essentially just don't do it with low quality women. It's not much of an achievement to sleep with somebody so far beneath you in terms of quality. It's just not a wise decision to make in pursuit of some short-term pleasure. It's not worth the long-term impact on your self-esteem. Now, the reason that I wanted to do this video is because I wanted to explain some of the nuance behind my advice as to why men shouldn't be too promiscuous, because this can get a little bit complex. One of the biggest factors that makes this so confusing is that your biology, your instincts are inherently promiscuous. Culturally, you might be monogamous, but sexually speaking, that is not the case. Biologically speaking, you can get turned on by more than one woman, and to make this even crazier, the fact that she's different, like a new woman, actually makes you even more turned on. Your brain is hardwired to sexually respond to novelty. To put it in more concrete terms, if you're staring at two completely naked women, one of them is a 10 out of 10 in terms of looks, the other's only a 7 out of 10, if you've seen the 10 out of 10 woman naked before, you're actually going to be more turned on by the uglier woman simply by the fact that she's new. To drive home the point, I'm going to say it again. Culturally, you might be monogamous, but biologically speaking, you are hardwired for novelty. Sexually, you are promiscuous. I try and spend a lot of time on this channel making sure that men do not feel guilty for craving sexual variety, because it's difficult to live in a society where the cultural norms don't sync up with your biological instincts. You want to sleep with every beautiful woman that you see, but that's not likely to happen, and culturally speaking, people aren't going to approve of you trying. Given all of this disapproval, it's easy to see why people get depressed and start thinking that there's something wrong with them. I'm faulty, I'm flawed, there's something broken about me. They think, what is the matter with me that I want something that everybody agrees that I shouldn't want? So let me be the voice to tell you that your desire is normal and natural. That is what comes from your biology. But the story doesn't stop there, because just because that's what's natural doesn't necessarily mean that that's what's appropriate. If we believed that it was, we would be committing what's called the naturalistic fallacy. That's where people believe that just because something is natural, then it's automatically morally and ethically good. Specific to this situation, it would be the belief that because promiscuity comes natural to men, that also means male promiscuity is good. That is definitely not the case. If men did not show restraint and override their biological instincts, then you'd have children growing up in fatherless homes, you'd have men missing out on pair bonding and the deeper levels of intimacy in relationships. They'd be trading all of that good stuff for a bunch of short-term pleasure that's not really fulfilling in any deep way. So you see, it's not just on a social level. For you as an individual, just surrendering to your biology is not going to make you happy. The next part of the video, I'm going to explain why your happiness and your biology don't really cooperate. But first, I want to tell you about my most recent Patreon exclusive content. I've got 2 new videos. The first is about why some women lie about being on birth control and explaining the psychology of why some women want to get pregnant as early as possible while others wait until they're around 30 years old. The second video is relevant for men trying to date women who've already been married and are now divorced, and explaining why they're often more interested in casual sex than starting a new relationship. Both of these videos were inspired by questions I received on Patreon, so if you have a question that you want to ask me, a question that you've always wanted me to do a video on, then go ahead and sign up on my Patreon. You can watch both of these videos plus a whole bunch of other Patreon exclusive content. It's just $5 a month and it's a great way of supporting the channel. Okay, returning to our discussion of why promiscuity is not a good path for men to take. We need to begin by understanding what is the point of our biology. Why do we have instincts? Why do we have certain biological drives? What is their purpose? 2 things. There are 2 reasons for your biological instincts. The first is to survive, and the second is to reproduce. You see, we tend to think of ourselves as this one homogeneous being, but biologically speaking, you actually need to consider things from the perspective of genes. A gene is a very specific sequence of DNA, and it acts like an ingredient to create proteins, which then interact with other proteins and other chemicals in your body that ultimately cooperate and create you, or your physical body, what you think of as you, as well as all of your biological instincts. This includes your instinct to seek shelter, to seek food, water, companionship, and your instinct for sexual promiscuity. For us men, our genes want us to be promiscuous. They are incentivizing us to have sex with women so that we can get them pregnant and reproduce. The reason is because your genes want to survive, ideally by keeping the body that they're in currently alive, but even better, by replicating themselves in the next generation, by being passed on to new offspring. Because when you have children, your genes live on through them in a much newer, healthier model. If you haven't read this yet, The Selfish Gene by Richard Dawkins, I highly recommend this book. It's going to explain how to understand biology from the gene's eye perspective, as well as a great guide to evolution. So you see, the genes in your body really just want 2 things. They want to survive and to reproduce. And actually, when you get right down to it, that's actually the same thing. They just want to continue existing. You know what your genes don't care about? Your happiness. Sure, your genes don't really mind if you're happy. They might even encourage it tacitly, because if you're happy, maybe you're more likely to survive or more likely to reproduce. But your happiness is a secondary consideration. Its primary objective is always to survive and to reproduce. And so it's only useful, your happiness, to the degree to which it furthers the primary goal. This is why you feel the desire to have sex with lots of different women. This is why you are hardwired for promiscuity. This is why you sexually respond to novelty. Your genes created those instincts inside you because it meant that you were more likely to have sex and to create children. By creating children, you replicate genes, and so the genes continue on living. But this is your life. It is emotional, it is spiritual, and it has meaning, at least to you. It's not enough to just be successful in a purely biological sense. You also want to be happy. Blindly following the instincts of your genes is not going to make that happen. I've known guys that are unhappy and who don't have a lot of success with women. And as far as I can tell, there is a correlation between their unhappiness and their lack of female companionship. It seems obvious to say that they're unhappy because they haven't slept with lots of women. But yet, I've known guys who have slept with a whole ton of women, and it doesn't seem to correlate with higher degrees of happiness. Yes, they might be happier than the man who is involuntarily celibate, but just sleeping with lots of women doesn't seem to make them happy. For some guys, it almost seems as though the more short-term flings that they have, the more one-night stands, the more unhappy they get. But you want to know where I have seen a happiness correlation. It's men who are in a relationship with a high-quality woman. If she's a kind, respectful, feminine, intelligent, high-quality woman, then yes, that does seem to correlate with higher degrees of happiness. And this is the thing about women that so many guys fail to appreciate. It's all about quality. I won't deny there is a part of your biology that thinks it's all about quantity. From a purely reproductive standpoint, it's right, but emotionally, psychologically, dare I say, spiritually, it's about quality. More is not better. If you sleep with one low-quality woman, and you feel miserable, then sleeping with 100 more low quality women is not going to make you feel better. But if you get into a relationship with one genuinely high quality woman, that has the capacity to change your life. It's like medicine. If you're sick, then taking one pill of the wrong medication is not going to cure your disease. And so taking 100 more is not going to make you feel any better. It might even make you feel worse. What you do need is one tablet of the correct medication. And then the difference can be enormous. You can actually go from feeling sick to feeling cured and healed. Low quality women are like an expired medication for the wrong disease. No amount of it is actually going to make you feel better. The only cure is the high quality woman. So please don't think that I am a prude. I am all in favor of sex and of sexual exploration. I am an advocate for embracing, accepting, and exploring all that comes natural to you sexually. And if you want to see me talk about this stuff, I have a whole bunch of explicit content on my Patreon. So I'm not encouraging any kind of sexual repression. What I am saying is that if happiness is your goal, then you cannot give in to your biological instincts towards promiscuity and expect that to make a difference. It's not going to, because your genes don't really care if you're happy. That's not their primary goal. They've got their own agenda, and your genes will probably be satisfied if you just sleep with a different prostitute every single night. But that's not going to make you happy. So take control of your own life, consciously override and overcome your biology so that you're in charge. You can dictate how your life turns out. Remember, if you want to hear more from me, check out my Patreon. Whole bunch of exclusive content. I'd love to have your support. This video is brought to you by Here Be Dragons, the story of a man who embarks on a 6-month experiment into the bizarre world of sugar babies. My full review of the book is in the description box below.